Hi, this is Julie, and I'm here today to read an HBQ story from one of our viewers, from Suzanne in West Covina, California. And Suzanne wrote that when she was 8 years old, she used to make quilts with her grandma. And she also made table covers and learned how to embroider leaves and flowers. She really loved doing that. Grandma taught her a lot of things. When she turned 20, she bought her first sewing machine and started making lap quilts. And so she made lap quilt after lap quilt for friends and family. And her favorite part about that was just the joy on everybody's face when she handed them out. She says, that is just priceless to me. She made a quilt for her husband. He was in the military, and she added all of his military pictures, and it gave her so much joy to watch him show off that blanket to all his military friends and his buddies. Suzanne has 5 boys and 1 girl. Her youngest boy has actually taken up quilting. He's made 5 quilts and he really loves it. They enjoy doing that so much together, and although she thinks that she is not a pro, she thinks she'll get there someday.
Hi everybody, my name is Allegra Erznosnik and I'm an account executive here at the Grace Company. I have a wonderful HBQ story to share with you today. It's from Terry, and she's from Tucson, Arizona. She starts her story with telling us how that when she was a toddler, she had trouble walking and was often held by a lot of her family members. And then she moved on to get training shoes and leg braces. And she also said that she was really close with her grandma, and they called her Nana Pancha. Nana Pancha, though, only spoke Spanish and she only spoke English, so they didn't often talk to each other. They just hung out a lot of the time. And she used to watch her grandma hand embroider with a small hoop frame. And eventually, when she would come over, her grandma would have a small hoop ready for her with a needle already threaded, and she would tell her how to do it just by pointing in the direction that she was supposed to stick the needle through the fabric. And then they moved on to quilting together, which I thought was really cute, and they would do small squares and sew them together. She did say her Nana had a treadle machine, but it was in storage, so I think they were doing hand sewing. I'm not really sure. Unfortunately, though, about 3 years after that, her Nana ended up passing away and she inherited all of her quilting supplies. But she said that they sat unopened for 3 years, and I think it's just because she wasn't sure how to proceed without her grandma telling her how to do it. And then she got in to, I think, middle school in her home ec classes, and then she learned how to sew. And she says that the Christmas after that, she found a brand new sewing machine under her Christmas tree, and she just blossomed into loving quilting and crafting and all of this stuff. And eventually her friend took her to a quilting block class, just a 1-hour class where they make a block, and it ended up turning into a monthly thing for them. And it really changed her perspective on quilting, knowing that it's not limited to just little squares, that there's lots of patterns and fun designs out there that you can make, and that it's really just based on your own creativity and what you want your quilt to look at. And she said that she became hooked, and she is an avid quilter now. I think that's just such a beautiful story, knowing that her and her grandma didn't have to talk to share this really close relationship, or for her to pass down a wonderful hobby that she loves to do. So thank you for sharing your story with us, Terry. We really love it, and we think it's really heartfelt and warming.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I am an account executive here at Grace Company, and I have a wonderful HBQ story to tell you guys today. This is the story of Bonnie from Birmingham, Alabama, and she tells the story of how she started quilting and where she is now. She started quilting at 5 years old after asking her Nana to teach her, and her Nana said, "Child, I am blind and I cannot teach you. No one can teach you what is in your heart." Next morning, she woke up, she found an envelope filled with different pattern pieces cut out of paper, cut out of newspaper, cut out of magazines. No instructions, just the pattern pieces. She became a self-taught quilter. She started by hand, quilting the pieces by hand. Then she started using a hand crank, then a treadle Singer machine, and she still quilted it all by hand. She pieced it with the machines, quilted by hand. A lot of times she'd find that she'd get it all quilted and then she'd have to rip it all out because it wouldn't quilt properly the way that she had pieced her pieces together. She also went on to teach others how to quilt, more as a guide, less as an instructor. She really does think that those who have quilting in their hearts will quilt. They don't have to be taught. They'll quilt, they'll figure it out. They'll find an instructor. When she heard of the cutie frame, she was changed. As soon as she received her cutie, it changed her whole world. The way she was quilting, she started with creating the Cutie Quilters Facebook group, and then she went on and started a YouTube channel called Quilting on a Thread with Bonnie Kemke, and able to show her other viewers and friends and quilters how to use the cutie quilting frame. She never believed that she would be doing what she's doing and teaching others what she's doing, but she knew she loved it, and that is where she is now. She still loves it, still loves quilting, loves teaching others, helping them grow and learn. And I love that story. Thank you so much, Bonnie, for sharing it with us.
Hey, my name is Jarek with the Grace Company. I'm an account executive here, and this is an HBQ story I like. And I'm just going to read it to you and tell the story. This is by Paulette. She's from Florida. Paulette started as a sewer in the 50s since her father worked for reprocessing fabrics. She says that, we would call them a recycler today. So that gave her access to a lot of different kinds of materials, lots of things, different things to play around with, silk, satins, everything in between. And by the time she was 13, she was designing and making all of her own clothes. Her mother and grandmother, they also knitted, so that gave her more exposure to that. A sad part of the story, her world changed a lot when her mom was diagnosed with cancer and she had to take over a lot of the household duties. She became very interested in science, and she hopes to one day find a cure for cancer. For the next 50 years, she worked full-time, went to school at night, and dedicated herself to research, clinical, and development of biotech cancer treatments. Super cool. 15 years ago, she finally retired full-time employment and moved to Central Florida with her partner of 30 years. She took classes in stained glass and really fell in love with designing, choosing colors, selecting different kinds of ways to go together, and making beautiful arts of work under the mentorship of a local artist there in Florida. She too was diagnosed with cancer and was on blood thinners and had to give up her new passion of creating glass. So then she turned back to making clothes. She started making pictorial wall quilts. It seems that there are the same design, layout, cutting techniques that glass required, except for the glass cuts. So she's like, oh hey, this is very similar. So when she was diagnosed with cancer, then she moved to doing the quilting, which ended up being a lot like the stained glass that she really loved. So she upgraded to her 40-year-old Bernina to a machine and invested in a cutie with a Brother domestic machine. Her free motion skills, she says, were not there, and I want them to be, so she recently purchased a 16 to help her with those skills. She can't take her savings with her, and she's on the downhill side of a mountain, and she has no desire to travel anymore since her career took her all over the world. And she loves being able to design and quilt patterns and put all various patterns together with the automatic features of the QCT5. Together with her Bernina and embroidery, she can make fun art quilts for wall hanging and lap quilts, as well as the failures that my dog appreciates. That's really cute. So it uses all the gold features, especially the pattern CAD and the eclipse, where it says that's where you take out a section. You can say, hey, don't quilt here, so that way you can do like applique and you don't quilt over a certain section. When life sends you a curveball, you gotta keep swinging and the world will appreciate your efforts. And then after years of radiation, chemo, and finally biotechnology drug, she's glad to say that she is in remission from stage 4 cancer. So quilting has been the lifeline that has kept her sane during the trying and difficult times. And she says, you're never too old to learn a new skill. Thank you so much for sharing, Paulette. It was a very touching story, and thank you for submitting it.
Hi, I'm Laurel Daniels. I am the assistant manager here at Grace Company, and today I'm going to be sharing with you an HBQ story of Cookie. Cookie started quilting in the late 70s, where her first quilt was a 12x12 puffy quilt. It was a fiber fill. Now, fiber fill was very heavy, and she stuffed a lot in there, so it was a very heavy quilt for her. So it was just kind of her first one getting into it. With that, life did intervene, and so kind of quilting up moved to the side a little bit. 2015, around that time frame, her husband did pass away. So the home they had lived in for 35 years, she sold, moved out of, and moved up to Virginia, just closer to where she was working. But it turns out to be a 200-year-old historical house. Just a little bit after she had moved there, someone from the Historical Society came and visited her and asked if they could do a little bit of a presentation. She said yes, of course, you know, she wanted to have an open house. So she thought, hey, well, this is the perfect opportunity, and she kind of got back into quilting. So she quilted a 9x9 squares, and I want to say she hand did them just because she talks about how tiny, you know, the little squares were that she was working on. Now, because of how close it was to them coming over, she didn't quite get to finish the quilt. She did just the first top part of it, but she thought, no worries, I'm going to go ahead and make the bed. The showing went wonderful. It was wonderful people to be able to see that home. Just tucked that quilt away, and she thought, hey, you know what, I'll get to it a little bit later. And she pulled it back out, and sure enough, there was a lot of loose threads there still, just from packing it away and leaving it set aside. She kind of talks a little bit about those microscopic pieces. So she did finish the top. She hasn't quilted it, but that's where you can see, she says, don't look too closely, but she is very proud of her work.
Hi, I'm Jana Matthews with the Grace Company. I'm here with another story from our HBQ Quilters. This story is about Barbara from Grayson, Kentucky. Barbara tells us about when she was first introduced to quilting at the age of 11 by her grandmother, so fantastic. And she first learned how to do a bow tie quilt. That is way cool. She said that she quilted it, but then she kind of put it away and forgot about it. And then in high school, she started doing it again and got it all finished. But then she lost it. She got married, she moved around, she never did find that again, but she started quilting again, and now she has great-grandchildren and grandchildren she's been doing quilts for. She's just super busy. She quilts on the 19 Unique machine and frame, and she says she's a little nervous about doing one for her firstborn grandchild, who is now a mother and is doing the quilt for that grandchild. But congratulations, Barbara. We really are so excited to hear more about you and your quilting journey. Thank you so much for sending in your story today.
I'm Melinda Romero with Grace Company. I'm an account executive, and I'm super excited. Wonderful HBQ story from Judy out of Medline Falls, Washington. Judy has been quilting for quite a few years, since she was about 4 years old. She started with darning yarn and a large needle, but she joined 4-H at 8 years old, and you know, she's been sewing ever since then. First project on her own was made from clothes and shirts from her husband. Her first quilt for herself at age 20. She's 76 now. She doesn't even know how many quilts she's quilted, you know, within her lifetime. She always seems, you know, her quilts get better and better. And I think that's kind of a testament for a lot of quilters. We don't know what we don't know. Every quilt you learn, you know, something new within that process. One of her, again, her first quilts going back for her in-laws. You know, that quilt is still in the family. Thank you, Judy, so much for your story. It's very inspiring. 76 now, been quilting since you were 4. Finish those UFOs that you may have stashed away. Blossom with that creativity. Thanks again, Judy.
Hi, my name is Anthony Witterberg. I am an account executive here at Grace Company. I wanted to come on and take a moment to share a wonderful HBQ story from Belinda here in Kentucky. Well, not here in Kentucky, but she's in Kentucky. So she starts her story with us saying that had the quilting gene in her all along, even though she didn't quite enjoy it from the start. Her mom and her grandmother were avid hand quilters, and they loved to do it, but it had just never gotten to her. Her sewing journey began when she was 8 years old, and she had actually become a seamstress and started to make her own clothes and really enjoyed that. Next, she was helping her mom, you know, with all the cutting of the fabric, the piecing, you know, really getting into what quilting is, and that's when the piecing bug hit her, but not quite yet the quilting bug. So she had started doing her own piecing, really making some beautiful designs, and sent them out to another quilter to finish them up, but something didn't quite feel right with that. She had wanted these quilts to be done, but they didn't feel like they were her personal designs. She had decided to invest in a long arm and made about 7 or 8 quilts and really enjoyed it. But you know, life happens, gets in the way. Unfortunately, her mom did have some medical issues, had a stroke, but moved in with her and her husband. They had become her primary caretakers, and in the meantime, Belinda had been drawing out a bunch of designs, about 20 to 25, just to keep her hands busy, get some designs out there. And, you know, back with more unfortunate news, her mother did end up passing away. And so she decided to take the time that she would be using to care for her mother to reinvest in a long arm and try again. She did end up getting the full setup, and she has done about 50 quilts in the last 3 years, which that is amazing. That's a ton of quilts to turn out. Keep going with it, keep pushing out those quilts and see if maybe there's a magic touch, a magic item, some new techniques that really spice up the game.